The release of Brittney Griner from Russian custody has put a new focus on the many other Americans still being held overseas.
That includes former Green Beret Luke Denman, who's currently being held in Venezuela. He and other Americans were sentenced to 20 years in prison in 2020. Venezuelan authorities believe Denman took part in a plot to overthrow the government and its leader, Nicolas Maduro.
We want to bring in Luke's brother, Mark Denman, who joins us now. Mark, we just mentioned the charges that your brother's being held under in Venezuela. First, what has our government told you about the legitimacy of those charges? And second, do you have additional hope this morning that your brother might come home, given that we saw Brittney Griner come home and now Paul Whelan's also in the news?
Right. Well, thank you guys for having me on, first of all. The attention from the press on these situations is one of the driving factors in bringing people's home. So this is important coverage. To your first question, that's the big question. What is the government hasn't told us much on it. We do know that we don't recognize Maduro. We have no consular services in Venezuela. So that's the point I always make is how do you recognize the detention of these two Green Berets if you don't even recognize the government who's holding them? That's the big question. How Brittney Griner relates to this, I mean, it's the president's demonstrated his ability when he wants to bring Americans home. So we're hoping to see more of that across the board.
Is there a negotiation at all open or underway between our government and someone within Venezuela about the status of your brother?
Right. I mean, anything I've got to say on that, I'm just pulling off of the Twitter sphere and the internet. The State Department certainly doesn't answer to me or tell me anything that's going on. A lot of times those things are sort of held back from the public. You look around much, you're going to see obviously the big story is what's going on with Saab, and that's what you see on Twitter all the time is the idea of trading Saab for the four or more Americans that are being held there. If we can make this difficult deal to bring Griner home, right? Obviously, everybody sees the controversy involved in that. It's always good to see an American home, and if the president's able to make that deal, certainly we can make a deal with Venezuela to bring 4 or more Americans home from there.
You know, it's interesting that there's not that much communication. It seems like throughout the negotiations around Brittney Griner, there was like the families were being kept in the loop. Hopefully that will be the case for your brother. Earlier this year, the U.S. secured the release of 7 Americans that were held in Venezuela. But I understand, Mark, that in your brother's case, it's a bit different, and it has served the Maduro administration, the government. They have continuously, basically used your brother's name to support a claim that the U.S. government is actively trying to, to overthrow him, to undermine the government and get him replaced. Yeah. Do you worry that or the kind of charges that he faced there would prevent him from coming home?
Yes, the word answer. A lot of folks that aren't, what I call the hostage community, right? All these families, we end up talking, and we've joined forces. The Bring Our Families Home campaign is a collection of a lot of the families of hostages working together. And everybody's got their own kind of stories, and the public at large doesn't get a lot of how this works. Any hostage is either considered lawfully detained or unlawfully detained. I always say lawfully detained if you got caught in the UK transporting cocaine. Well, you're going to get arrested. You're not a hostage, right? Whereas if the Taliban pick up a journalist, well, that would be an unlawful detention, right? And that's what's shocking in Luke and Aaron's case is while the government doesn't recognize Maduro, they seem to be giving him legitimacy by recognizing his ability to lawfully detain these Americans, right? So that has been our particular fight, is getting the government to recognize that. We have NGOs across the board that have recognized their unlawful detention. However, State Department has yet to pass that case over to Spiha's office, Special Presidential Envoy on Hostage Affairs, Roger Carstens. That's where the case ought to be according to the law that's supposed to regulate this thing, right, which is the Levinson Act. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, Mark, under the header of what you want people to know about your brother, I wonder, hearing it through a brother's ears, these charges, what do they sound like to you?
Well, the situation in which these guys were captured in, it's unknown. Reach out to the various clandestine services that are involved in these kinds of things. Nothing has really been presented to the public about it. I would reference John Bolton gave a nice interview on this. We'd like to see him speak up some more. Supposedly one of the main guys behind this, Jordan Gradeau, starting a production company in Arizona, is trying to make an action movie, right? He's running free, not charged with anything. We've got a stalled FBI investigation. So there's a lot of mystery there, and I have a background in high-rise window cleaning. It's not my area to know the ins and outs and details. I mean, I can tell you that both of these men served honorably in the military. Green Berets went and fought for this country. Aaron's got 2 kids growing up without him. Luke's, young in his 30s, waiting to lead his life here. They've led nothing but honorable lives, and they deserve the utmost attention from the government to bring them home.
That's a powerful note and an important note to end on. Mark Denman, thank you very much. I'm sure your brother, if he could see this, would appreciate your advocacy for attention to his case and his ultimate release.
Absolutely. I appreciate y'all's coverage on this. It's very important.
Thank you.